Hello, welcome to my version of isolation, which I'm lucky enough to be sharing with a wife, 4 kids, a daft dog, and a lawnmower buzzing in the background, which I do realise I'm very lucky, and others aren't so lucky, which I guess is the whole point of this whole wonderful idea. I'd like to start by telling a little story. And it's a story which begins in 1987 with one of my favourite TV programmes called Record Breakers, with the lovely Roy Castle, now sadly departed. But in 1987, a guy called Dominic O'Brien was watching an episode of Record Breakers, and it was an episode that was amazing in many ways, but I guess the most important thing about that episode was it changed Dominic's life forever. That's because he sat mesmerised as a chap called Creode Carvello recalled the exact order of a shuffled deck of playing cards in under 3 minutes. Which, for me, sounds a pretty amazing feat. But more of that in a minute. So instantly inspired, Dominic thought, I'm going to train my brain to do that. And now, he's got quite the memory, which is a bit of an understatement, really. For example, just by looking at each card once, he can remember a sequence, not just of 54 playing cards, but of 54 decks of cards, shuffled randomly. Now, if you do the maths, that's 2,808 cards. So, you might not be surprised to hear that Dominic went on to win the World Memory Championships 8 times, and that's between 1991 and 2001, I think it was. Since then, he's made a very good living out of his memory, and he's worked with a number of high-profile celebrities, including none other than Lenny Henry. And before a big tour, Dominic trains Lenny to remember his material before taking to the stage and being hilarious. And through practicing different techniques, he's even helped Lenny remember massive, long Shakespearean speeches when he played Othello. Now, again, it won't surprise you to hear that no one has won the World Memory Championships more times than Dominic. But this is a good one. This might surprise you. His memory is so revered that he's actually been banned from every single casino in Las Vegas. But what makes this more amazing for me is that Dominic O'Brien is no genius. He's no child prodigy, wasn't even a star pupil in class, and as a student he even had problems reading and writing. In later years was unfortunately diagnosed with dyslexia. And in his own words, he'll be the first to admit that his brain is average, but he'll also be the first to tell you that you can achieve similar results with your brain. So that little but quite wonderful story encapsulates what I'm mainly talking about today, which is exercise. Because how can Dominic make a claim like you can have as good a brain as he can? How does it even happen? Well, for me, there are 2 words which are vital to this process of making your brain anywhere near Dominic's. Training, practicing. Because for me, the human brain is one big muscle. And it only gets better through exercise. And like every muscle, I guess, it thrives on regular and varied use. And that's great for anyone in a creative role, such as copywriting, art direction, or the creation of advertising concepts, say. This is gold dust. It means 2 things. 1, you certainly don't have to be born with innate creativity. Lots of people sort of make throwaway comments, don't they, and sort of say, oh, I don't know how you creatives do it, or it's just born creative. Yeah, I think some people probably are, but I firmly believe people can be trained to be creative. The second point is, if you are creative, the brain being a muscle means you can actually improve the creative prowess that you're already born with. So, okay then, how can you train your brain to be more creative? Well, put simply, more exercise. If you're already in a role in which you're creating different concepts on a daily basis, your brain is probably getting the lateral thinking workout it needs. But if not, and you want to sharpen those ideas, generate more of them, or you just want your brain to start thinking a little more non-linear, I'd just like to go through, in the short time I've got, 4 or 5 little tips, that things you can do to improve that lateral thinking. Yeah, what? A cruciverbalist is someone who solves crossword puzzles, and a quick crossword every now and then works wonders for giving your vocabulary a boost. But as many marketing and advertising routes or ideas are based on 2 or more concepts or thoughts mashed together, cryptic crosswords are even better and an amazing way to physically make your mind focus on 2 or more things at once. And here's a bonus. As Anne Lucas in September's issue of International Journal of Geriatric Psychiatry, easy for you to say, points out, a daily dose of crosswords can improve mental functions in patients with brain damage or early dementia. I guess it's a case of use it, don't lose it. As an added bonus, and to take your mind off looking at my ugly mug for a second or two, here's a not so cryptic clue, the answer of which is 2 words long. The first word is 9 letters and the second word is 4 letters. See if you can get it. I'm sure you can, and I'll give you the answer at the end. Now, why wait for a brief when you can go out and just make your own? Advertise high-end watches, baked beans, gold-plated paper clips, anything. Whilst ploughing through my graphics course at uni, we had about 6 weeks to work on one brief. Imagine that now, 6 weeks on one brief. Which, as you can imagine, left quite a lot of time for self-initiated projects. But I guess the point I'm making is do it even if you're a professional, because it's a really good way of making yourself produce ideas and letting your mind have a serious wander, serious play out, without brand restrictions, without caveats, without the intervention of compliance and editors of a setup. And if you can't think of a brief, you can use a technique that's often used by planners when they're creating briefs. It's a technique called get to buy. So the get a certain target audience, so get old age pensioners or get first time mums. 2, sign up for membership, buy a new car, looking to go into Turkey on holiday. Buy could be highlighting how picturesque the country of Turkey is, how wonderful the people are, or we're talking about the car, could be how green the credentials of the car are, how comfortable it is. So you can sort of see there through the get to buy, you can create a matrix and then just swap and change and just pull out any product on a day-to-day basis. It's a really good way of just making your brain sort of switch different ways on a day-to-day basis, especially if you're kind of working on one client day in, day out in your professional role. Look at existing ads. It doesn't matter what kind. Press, TV, even radio ads when you're in the car. Take the ad and then work out what you think the original proposition was. Mull it over in your mind and ask yourself, what kind of proposition is it? Is it price-led? Is it a service beta? Convenience? Then think about whether it's a rational proposition or maybe an emotive proposition. Does it bang on about features, or does it hammer home the benefits? Or, if it's any good, the one single-minded benefit. You may come up with more than one answer. It doesn't matter. You're forcing your brain to think about the mechanics and indeed the art of the ad. And remember, you're exercising your brain here, not solving a specific problem. Excuse me? What's that? No? No, you're absolutely right. That's right. Some of the best cartoon strips are a great way to make your brain think about two or more concepts at the same time. I'm thinking of stuff like Calvin and Hobbes, in which the genius author Bill Watson lets us into the wonderful world of a young boy and the adventures he has with his stuffed tiger. If you haven't seen it before, check it out. It's donkey's old, but it's really good and really imaginative. Even better for twisting your brain into shapes it may not normally venture is Gary Larson's brilliant Far Side, in which we're treated to thousands of random universes where insects and animals make you really, really view your own world quite differently indeed. And this is the key. The more exposure you can give your brain to different ways of thinking, the more it will tune into different ways of working. It's about combining that abstract with reality, dramatising the benefits in hundreds of different ways, packing more into the propositions you're given in the brief, and of course, manipulating those insights to become far more impactful. Okay, I've mentioned mentally changing the way your brain's synapses fire off. At this point, it's about old school exercise. Now, in these current tough times of lockdown, the government has told us that you are allowed to go out for one session of exercise outdoors a day. And in the interests of exercise and exercising your brain, I would definitely recommend you take them up on this. For me, running and before lockdown, swimming, both solitary exercises, I guess, were the perfect way to do two things, and still are the perfect way to do two things. One is brew half an idea or no idea at all into maybe a full-blown campaign. And two, the other one is, especially when I'm running, being able to switch off altogether from the stress of trying to meet a tight deadline with an idea, which in turn kind of resets your brain. And then that in turn can often generate an idea from a completely different spot or location, completely left field. How? I'm not entirely sure how the process of that works, but I know it does, for me at least. I kind of liken it to being stuck down a tight alley in a car with no reverse gear, I guess, and no matter how many times you do, you can't get out of that alley. The physical act of getting all those endorphins racing through your body picks that car up, turns it 180 degrees, and puts it back on the open road, ready to start again and tackle the brief from another angle. Humans love to have a laugh with each other. That's one of the biggest things I'm currently missing at the moment, that close connectivity with each other, being in the office, having a laugh with fellow colleagues, friends. The good thing about this is it's temporary. Very soon we'll all get back out there. We'll all be together again, laughing and joking, hopefully. But our point about humour is it's always been a big part of advertising, so there's still plenty of humour you can access online. But the reason it's been a big part of advertising, I guess, it's a really good way to overemphasise, exaggerate a point. So it's a creative way to get a point across. It helps for recall, and it also helps, I think, to create empathy between us as human beings. But not only that, in much the same way as the more abstract cartoon strips help your brain to view life differently, the way a lot of humour, the way a lot of jokes work, is they take your brain down one route, and then just before the funny bit, they give you a fork in the road and they make you take a sharp right or a sharp left, and at that point, that's where you get the humour. And they send your thought process down one route, then another, or even two paths at once. So I would say, even in these times of lockdown, watch more comedians, get online, have a look at different types of comedians. Those who tell long story type jokes, they'll not only stretch your brain, but they'll offer little slices of human insight that you can use to pepper into your creative thinking. Before lockdown, I would have said go see more stand-ups. and get out to a few open mics. You can still check some of those online, from the bad to the more professional, from the amateur to the really polished performances. Just soak it all up. If nothing else, I guess they'll relax your mind so much. There's a good chance it might open the door to a creative nugget you've been trying to crack all week on a brief, I guess. This last point before I love you and leave you is sounds a bit random, see ambiguously, but I'm talking about a couple of random books that I actually own. Optical Illusions. They're just page after page of Optical Illusions. Now, going back to some of the ad examples I just showed you a second or two ago when we were talking about humour, the art direction in those images kind of makes you think of two things at once, or one thing and then immediately another. And that's what I mean by Optical Illusions. There's quite a famous one that was doing the rounds on Twitter and Facebook probably about a year and a half ago, of the duck, or is it a rabbit? Now, that particular optical illusion became, like I say, quite famous. Went fairly viral around the internet, but it's actually quite old, is that illusion. The earliest known version of it was a drawing from an 1892 issue of a German magazine called, excuse my pronunciation, Fliegende Blätter. This was a German humour magazine, and it was captioned, "Which animals are most like each other? Rabbit and duck," written underneath. Now, while that humour may not be of the age now, it kind of went into a sort of deeper psychological thinking that was made famous by a guy called Ludwig Wittgenstein, if I pronounced that right. And he included it in a work called Philosophical Investigations, and it was a means, as he put it, of describing two different ways of seeing. And how he put it quite nicely, I think, is the difference between seeing that versus seeing it as. So for me, it goes back to the whole point of splitting your brain in two, making not just yourself think of two different things at once, but to illustrate a creative point. So that's just a few ideas, tips to get your brain either thinking creatively from scratch or exploring more ways to think ever more creatively. So as I said at the start, I think you can train people to think in a creative manner, even to such an extent that you can get into a professional role that way. So if you are not currently in a creative role, I think you can start training your brain to think more creatively. You're not just born with it. I know some people are, but I really truly believe that people can be taught creativity and creative thinking. And then on the other hand, if you are already in a creative role, I think it's a really healthy exercise to keep it exercised. Oh, I should have employed a copywriter. And it hopefully shows you that you can take your brain down different routes to keep it going, keep it agile, keep thinking about all those new great ideas. It's not an exhaustive list by any means. There are as many ways to physically and mentally exercise your brain as there are ways to advertise, from using interesting characters to personification, from a problem-solution approach to metaphors and similes, and many, many more ways to advertise things. There are just as many ways to keep your brain exercised. So, I'll love you and leave you. And I'll love you and leave you with the answer to my earlier crossword clue. You all knew that, didn't you? Take care. Goodbye.